So the M word, militia, it's almost a swear word in our culture. Even those of us who believe in them and subscribe to them are a little embarrassed to bring it up. There's this stereotype of a militiaman that he's a little weak, a little befuddled, white, short, overweight, scared and angry, and looking to band together so he can oppress minorities and pick on the little people and kick around the weak. And I submit to you that the truth is that the men who are interested in militias are strong men who want to serve and who want to protect and want to build and want to have adventures and be involved with big things and important things. And it's time for us to stop letting the cultural elites shame us about these ideas of militias and being involved in a militia. You know, it's government, it's the cultural elites that have things to be ashamed of. It was governments who perpetrated the Holocaust. It was a government that killed 65 million Russians. It was a government that killed 125 million Chinese. The Khmer Rouge was a government. Time and time again, you look at the atrocities and the horrific events that have happened in our world, in our history, and they were all perpetrated by governments. The French Revolution was done by a government. And it's not even necessarily all the big things that have happened too. You know, there's other things. In our own nation, we had that incident where the government was infecting black men with I believe it was syphilis, and I believe it was in Tuskegee. It was in Alabama, I think, and they were infecting black men with horrific communicable disease so they could study the disease and ostensibly cure it in white people. That's why I never understand why African Americans support large government, because it's been government that's oppressed them every step of the way. I'm not saying it was only government, but government brought the power to make it happen. You know, segregation and voting suppression and all this stuff. It was all backed up by the force of the government, state governments and even federal government. I know there was this one brief shining period where the federal government stepped in and forced some changes. I would like to point out that was largely due to Dwight Eisenhower, who doesn't count. Dwight Eisenhower is an exception in the history of the world almost. He ranks up there not far below George Washington, in my opinion. Be that as it may, it's governments, it's the cultural elites who are the ones who should be ashamed of themselves and be embarrassed to admit who they are. You know, it's the cultural elites who have killed, I think it's 45 million abortions in this nation now. Even if you support abortion, there's no way you can say 45 million of them should have occurred. You know, it's the cultural elites who, I talk about this time and time again. You know, there's 8-year-old kids who are being started on gender reassignment, right? That's an atrocity, you know, and it's the cultural elites in the government that's behind that kind of stuff. It's not militiamen. We have our problems now, but that's the problem. We're limited. We don't have that overbearing, irresistible power that can lead 125 million people to be killed. You know, when militiamen go bad, we end up lynching somebody, which is bad. You know, that's wrong. Don't get me wrong. There's really almost never an excuse for lynching, because if the crime was bad enough and the evidence is strong enough to justify the death penalty, then you don't need to lynch them. You turn them over to the authorities, and you let justice take its course. The only time you people would want to lynch is because they're looking out for vengeance, or they don't think the evidence is strong enough, or the charge is serious enough to get them the vengeance they think they deserve. That's always going to be wrong. So there's never a justification for a lynching. But my point is, as bad as lynchings are, that's about as bad as a militia can get. All right, we can't we can't kill 6 million Jews in gas chambers, you know. We can't collectivize all the farms in an entire nation and starve 40 million people to death. Right? It's only government that can do that. So when they roll their eyes at us and try to ridicule us and put us down and put us back in our place, it's time for us to stand up and say, no, sir, I apologize. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's you, or at least your institution, your position, that has done all these things. You know, the Crusades, which half the Crusades were a good idea and half the Crusades were stupid. It's the governments that were behind the Crusades. The Inquisition was done by a government, the Spanish government at the time. You pick an atrocity, you pick a tragedy, and it was the government behind it. All right. So here's my plea. You know, if you're one of these men who believe that you're responsible for the safety and security of your family and your community and for the establishment and maintenance of freedom, it's time to just claim it. You know, it's time to come out of the closet and just say, you know what, it's not the government's job. The government has proven incapable of doing it, or they're unwilling to do it. And maybe we can't force these changes. Maybe we shouldn't even force the changes. Maybe we just need to stand up against the current and just be seen and heard. I am under no illusions that, you know, there's going to be a sudden movement started. You know, the train has to go through all the stations on its way to the wreck. I think the wreck is inevitable at this point. And I think, you know, it's American men who are to blame. We've abdicated. But I think if us as individuals and as individual groups, if we want a clear conscience, when that wreck does come, you know, that we were on the side of the track waving our lanterns in the air, screaming, stop, stop, stop. This is the time and this is the way, you know, to band together to say, we don't support this, we don't consent to what you're doing, you're doing this without our blessing, you're doing this without our okay. This is not what our forefathers bequeathed us. We don't agree to it. You're forcing this on us without our consent. So there you go. I'm not quite sure how to wrap that up and put a little bow on it. I rambled for about 15 minutes in an earlier attempt, and I was going to try to chop this one back down to 5 minutes so I didn't lose anybody. But I wish I had some sort of pithy statement to tie it all up for you and sort of give this, you know, clarion call to action. But it really just is going to come down to grunt work. You know, just saying who you are and what you want until you find somebody else who wants it too, and is willing to work with you on it, and not being afraid of the opinion of the people you go through on the way. Yeah, I'd like to form a militia. Yeah, I'd like to form a militia. Yeah, I'd like to form a... Eventually, someone's going to say, yeah, I'd like to form a militia too. You're going to get some eye rolls on your way, man. But you know what? Those people aren't... Their opinion's not worth it anyway, because they're weaklings and they're waiting for the government to take care of them, and they don't really care what it costs them, as long as they don't have to get out of their comfort zones at all. That's it. We need to make militias polite again. We need to bring them back into polite society. It doesn't need to be the M word. We don't need to let them stereotype us as mean, angry weaklings. We need to we need to show them that this was what the nation was founded on, was the militia, and up through 1916, when a blood-soaked European adventure got us turned around, just like George Washington warned us it would. Anyway, thanks, man.